And I'm
Great.
recording to my computer just in case, Melissa.
Oh, great.
Sounds good. So cool. Thanks, Melissa. I appreciate it. So I'll just introduce myself a little bit too. Randall Beckman. Um, I've been running, I guess my first marathon, I was talking to Melissa about that was 1992. Since then, I got a little crazy. I've done 9 Ironman events, 4 fulls and 5 half Ironman. Um, did some other crazy events. I did the Goofy Challenge where it's the half marathon on Saturday, full marathon on Sunday, and we can talk about that too. So the talk today is a little bit about just general healthy running and like where we are today with shoes and socks and foot care and other basic things and why we do certain things and what to incorporate if you're not incorporating certain things and just little general overview. Um, just so y'all know, I did practice in Houston in the Memorial City area for about 25 years. Last year, I was lucky enough to actually retire. So y'all cannot see me as a patient, unfortunately. But at the end, Melissa has my contact. If y'all have other questions, I'm absolutely happy to entertain questions afterwards on my Instagram or other contacts. Y'all can just direct message me, and we're happy to answer any questions on that avenue. Presently, my wife and I are in Wales. We're in Cardiff, Wales, and it is about 8:07 p.m. here in Wales, United Kingdom. So without further ado, we'll get the talk going. It's a pretty quick talk, and then we'll open up for a little bit more questions and stuff. So we'll do next slide.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, you got to do that.
I am
Yeah,
have
no
to
problem.
to the other side. Um, okay, how's that working?
There we go. So today the topics we're going to talk about. I think that's how they actually spell stretching over here in Wales in Welsh. Some of the English over here is a little bit different. There's a lot. They actually have the signs in English and in Welsh, and it's kind of interesting. But we're going to talk about shoes, socks, stretching, and slow. What I mean by that. So next slide. So shoes. There's a lot of variety in shoes today. They're all over the map. I think the biggest advancement was recently in the London Marathon, which I was actually here in London Marathon, and Adidas came out with the lightest shoe made and had a carbon fiber plate in it, and the technology is insane. And the first 2 finishers broke the 2 hour mark on the marathon for the first time ever. And a lot of it has to do with that technology, and we can talk about the carbon fiber plate, why that's a mechanical advantage. They have everything from zero drop to like minimal shoes like the Vibram Five Fingers, and I don't know where you can get those these days. And then the standard traditional shoes, and then the maximal cushioning shoes, and we'll talk a little bit about that as well. So go for next slide. Um, the general foot type guide in like when you go to a lot of shoe stores like I'll name call here like Fleet Feet, they separate the shoes into cushion, stability, and then motion control. And really what they're looking for is, and hopefully you can see this, when we look at a shoe, they're looking at the frontal plane. And the frontal plane is where your foot rotates and rocks this way. And that tells like how your foot is. And when we talk about that evil word pronation, you actually need pronation to shock absorb. Okay. But if you're over pronating, and that's when it becomes pathologic and that becomes a problem. So people that run normally, and y'all can see them normally are on the outside of their foot, they need more of a standard cushion shoe. And that has equal internal and external rotation of the shoe, right? And that's a standard cushion shoe. Those are your standard ones. The stability shoe, typically on the arch side, and you can see on the picture here, has a little bit of gray foam on part of the arch of the shoe. And what that is it's a thicker, harder durometer or thicker foam that doesn't allow the shoe to roll inward as much. And then the motion control beefs that up and puts like some plastic in there and thicker gray foam and some other materials in there to stop that other internal rolling and stuff. And those are for the over pronators and whatnot. Now, if you're wearing an orthotic or an arch support in your shoe, most of the time, if you go from a motion control and put an arch support in there, you want to drop down at least one of that stability type because a lot of times the motion control and the arch support is going to keep you too much on the outside and can cause a little bit of lateral or outside knee pain and other issues and stuff. So you want to drop down that grade. If you're in a motion control, go down to stability or maybe even a cushion. And if you're in a stability, definitely drop down to a cushion. If you're adding in an arch support, like if you see a foot doctor or orthopedic guy, and they're adding an arch support in. So keep that into mind. And it does take a while to control that foot rotation. So that's just the frontal plane part of the shoe. So let's go to the next slide and let's talk about the next part of the shoe. This is the sagittal plane, and this is where the shoe collapses. And this on the right, you can see if we collapse a shoe, you don't want the shoe to collapse in the arch of the shoe. Your foot does not bend there. Everybody try to bend your foot. It bends where your toes meet your foot, and that's right in the front. It doesn't bend in the middle. So if you're running, when you run, you have that axial load, that up and down load, 1.5 times your body weight. You don't want the shoe to collapse there. You're going to cause a lot of strain, stress fractures, and other issues, tendonitis and things like that, if the shoe collapses in the arch. So really, you want a little bit of a stiffer shoe because you do have 1.5 times your body weight. And if you can squeeze it with just your hands, trust me, your body weight is going to collapse that thing. So I call this a gentle shoe test. You can go to the next slide. That's fine. Let's talk about socks. Socks are kind of important. We've got all these socks like the Dry Fit or Cool Max socks, like the Features, Bamba, things like that. I always ran in like a super thin Smart Wool, which is one in the middle. These toe socks on the right, the Injinji, or there's a couple other brands. I like the toe socks too for people that are prone to blisters and people's feet where the toes aren't exactly perfectly straight. Sometimes they can separate them and stop the rubbing and irritation in between the toes. They do take a little while to get used to. They drive my wife crazy, but they can be a good adjunct too. But definitely you want to stay away from cotton. Period. End of story. Cotton is evil. Cotton is bad. Okay. Cotton will also make your shoes and feet stink a little bit more. They don't absorb and wick the moisture as well. They're not really healthy for your feet. Some runners run in like a thin, like silk, sock liner, and that's fine too if you're used to that. But typically, this technology in the shoes, in the socks, like I think Smart Wool is one of the better technologies for wicking the moisture and whatnot. Next slide here. What about compression? We see a lot of runners wearing compression tights. We call these compression sleeves, where they're a little bit easier to put on than the socks that have the foot and the calf muscle. This is honestly dealer's choice. And the studies that were done on compression socks, and they had a lot of runners with compression, not compression, and they really didn't affect recovery. They didn't affect speed. They didn't affect a lot of things. But there's no negative to them. So basically, the moral of the story with compression is if it makes you feel a little bit better, absolutely wear them. It's not going to technically give you a mechanical advantage. It's not going to improve the circulation as much better, according to all the studies, but there's no negative to them. And they can definitely stop some fatigue later on. Now, if you have any evidence or history or family history of varicose veins, or little veins sticking out of the back of your calf, I think these are a very, very big adjunct because those veins, the lining on inside of the veins, they're pretty fragile and pretty weak, and they don't allow the external circulation to pump in. And the compression, like over-the-counter compression, we call these millimeters of mercury. These are only like 10 to 15, maybe up to 20 millimeters of mercury. And the prescription ones go up to like 30, maybe 40. And everyone says, oh, it's going to cut off my circulation. It's physically impossible to do that because, and hopefully I'm not talking too fast, when we're at 40 millimeters of mercury, if everybody knows your blood pressure, let's say your blood pressure is 120 over 70, it has to be more than 70 to stop your circulation. So at 40, at 40 millimeters of mercury, that's way below that 70 number. So unless you're up that level, you're not going to stop your circulation. Okay. So compression is dealer's choice. If it feels better, wear them. If it doesn't, no big deal. Next slide. Go back right past the compression. There you go. Stretching. So stretching it, like there's all these different stretches that are super important to do. And you all know a lot of stretches and stuff like that too. Here's the studies long-term on stretching. A lot of runners warm up a little bit and do some light stretching before they run. And I think they found that that's absolutely acceptable parameters. It is definitely very important to stretch when you're done running because that's when the muscle contraction actually happens, and you can cause a little bit more tightness. So a light warm up. A lot of the ultra marathoners, but the professional runners and stuff, you'll see them running like a 10-minute mile or 12-minute mile before they start racing, and that's to warm up and loosen up their muscles. And they'll do a little bit of a light stretch to loosen things up. But they definitely spend a lot of time outside of the running environment stretching and stuff. On the next slide, I want to talk about some things that we definitely forget, and a lot of podiatrists forget this and stuff too. So everyone knows about the Achilles tendon, right? And the Achilles tendon is invested within your foot, and that plantar fascia, okay? Everyone knows this word. Everyone's heard that word, plantar fasciitis. You got to stretch the posterior chain, and the posterior chain starts from the foot to the calf muscle, which is two different muscles, right? We got the gastrocnemius, which goes above the knee, and the soleus, which is below the knee. So that's why the runner stretches the knee straight and the knee bent, so it gets both muscle groups. We cannot forget about the hamstring because the hamstring is in the back of the leg too. Here's the magic bullet too. The anterior hip flexor. If you see on the left here, the anterior hip flexor is often missed with runners and is super duper tight.
Mm-hmm.
And if the anterior hip flexors are tight, it's going to rotate your hips forward, tightening your hamstring, tightening your calf muscle, all the way down into your plantar fascia. The plantar fascia attaches to the bottom of your calcaneus or your heel bone, the Achilles tendon on the back of it. It's the same bone. It only rotates one way. So if your anterior hip flexor is tight, your hamstring is tight, your Achilles is tight, and you're going to get plantar fasciitis. Okay, so do not forget the hips. Okay, so that's the whole posterior chain. Begins in the anterior at the hips all the way down to the Achilles. Next slide. A long time ago, I had a runner come into me and said, I need orthotics. I need orthotics. I'm having IT band issues. I'm having shin splints. I'm having these planes. I'm having these issues and whatnot. And I watched her walk down the hall and I looked at her butt muscles, and one of her butt muscles was predominantly smaller than the other one. Okay. And it wasn't just the gluteus maximus. And if you look at this picture, here's basic anatomy. The gluteus medius and the piriformis are transverse muscles and stabilize the femur. Okay, and that stops a lot of rotation. Okay, the hip strength is so powerful. One of the things that separates us from animals, like the monkeys and every other animal, is our butt muscles. If you look at monkeys, they don't have big butt muscles. But what makes us walk upright is multiple things, but primarily one is the glute muscles. And the transverse glute muscles, the gluteus medius, adductor, obturator, and the piriformis, but typically the gluteus medius and piriformis. And when you type in gluteus medius piriformis muscle strengthening, you're going to get those other ones. And those are those lateral muscles where you do the clamshell exercises, the sideways ones, the single leg lunges where you keep your knees straight. Those are missed so many times. I've had multiple, like before I retired, I can't tell you how many runners came in my office with so many foot problems, and their feet were perfect. But I tested their hips, and one side was predominantly weaker or stronger, and they had that asymmetry, and that beat up the foot. Okay, because go to the next slide, and you can see what happens here. As we have some asymmetry, we cause this rotation. Okay, and the knee rolls in, and then we can have IT band syndrome, what we call Pezan-Serine syndrome, or lower knee pain, shin splints, posterior tibial tendon issues, arch pain, plantar fasciitis, all from gluteus medius weakness or asymmetry. Okay, so the hips are so important when we run. They are the primary factors in that. And what attaches to the hips? Our abs, oblique, and our back. So when we talk about core strength now, we don't have to talk about just abs, oblique, and back anymore. It's actually our hips. Okay, and it's so important for runners, big time. We cannot forget this because of that sort of rotation. Everything's connected, right? It's not just the feet and legs and calves, everything. The next slide here. Now we're back down to the take it slow part. Everyone wants to run and run fast, and you see your friends running fast. We have this action when we run. There was a study, it was put out, I think about 8 or 10 years ago, and it talked about runners and a lot of your non-running friends and a lot of non-running doctors and a lot of non-running people say running's so bad for your knees, running's so bad for your cartilage. And the reality it is, they did a 20-year follow-up on runners, and what they found was that runners had better bone density, better cartilage thickness and health, better tendon issue and health, ligament issue and health. And what happens is over time is if we're running healthy and pain-free, and we do all the things that we're supposed to do, like change the shoes regularly and things like that too, we have this stress, recovery, and then adaptation over and over and over. And we increase our mileage and we increase our strength slowly over time. And we don't beat ourselves up, but our body is basically causing little micro stress fractures in the bones, in the cartilage, in the ligaments, in the tendons. And then we heal and then we strengthen up more. And slowly over time, the collagen will adapt. The bone density will adapt. Okay. So this is where nutrition comes in as well, right? Keeping yourself hydrated with the proper electrolytes and the proper nutrition and all the big, well-balanced diet that we talk about. We have to heal over time, and slowly over time, we're going to stress, heal, recover, build upon that. Okay. And this is where foundation building is really important. It's not always valuable to just do these junk miles. We need to stress more. We need to do some speed workouts. We need to do some hill workouts. We need to do some stair climbs. Yes, they are difficult. Yes, they are hard. Okay. I've been there. I know. But they're super duper important. When you're running, you got to run for a purpose and slowly increase your mileage slowly over time. And our old school basic rule is 10% a week or so. Okay. Let's go to the next slide. Strength training. Okay. I used to forget about this back in the 90s. And you can't do it anymore. Like, when you're younger, you certainly can do this, but not in your 30s and 40s and 50s. Strength training is super important. There's multiple exercises here. A lot of these are abs, oblique, glute bridges, develop your glute muscles, doing your lunges, doing different exercises like that are super valuable. Strength training to work everything out, to build up that strength. And one of the old analogies that people were talking about was you get like a Lamborghini or a Ferrari engine and you put it in a little tiny Honda Civic. It's not going to do so well, but you put that in a big car, the car is going to run a little bit smoother. It's going to balance itself out. So get your strength, get your core, get your abs, oblique, back, butt muscles, your core strong, and then you can work on the lower extremity strength as well. But once you're strong upper body, you can balance everything out as well. Okay. So super important to not forget about strength training. Let's go to the next slide. This is my last slide, and this is to scare everybody off on running because I can go down this list of all these classic running injuries. I think I've had almost all of these except for I don't think I've had. Yeah, no, I've had pretty much all of these, okay, over my career. When you have an injury, when you're having a problem, when you're having issues, you got to listen to your body because trying to run through some things, this is the classic runner's mentality. Just take some Advil, run through it. It's fine. It's not healthy. Listen to your body, see what's going on, maybe see a professional if you have to. Your big bullet points are obviously toenail and calluses and blisters, those need to be taken care of immediately. But pains inside the foot, if you have swelling or bruising, things where you push on it and that indention, that swelling is still there and it's super duper tender, push on your bones. If your bones are tender, those are big red flags that you got to see a doctor. If any of your bones are tender in your foot and really press on the bones, it's most likely a stress fracture. Got to see a doctor. Okay. If your tendons are tender, if you have what we call pitting edema, you press on it and that indention stays in there for a couple of seconds, don't fool yourself. Those are big red flags. If it's just a little bit sore neck and pain and you can run through it and it loosens up, it's one thing. But when these things don't stop, definitely get into a professional and whatnot. So don't ignore the injuries. It's super duper important. Final note about shoes. We talk about that. It's the standard rule is 400 to 500 miles on a pair of shoes, 400 to 500 miles max. And then you got to trade them out. So don't be a cheapskate. shoes are super duper valuable and they can save your feet. So that's my talk today, and I'm going to open it up for questions. But here's my Instagram handle too, and you can follow my journeys across the world.
All right.
Yeah, so how does weight affect? I think I saw that in the chat. How does weight affect mileage on shoes? Um, it's a decent question. I mean, it depends upon what shoes you're starting in. You know, shoes have where the technology is in shoes today. Um, Basically, shoes have this what we call EVA foam in there, and will collapse and rebound over time. If you have the appropriate shoe and they're new shoes, um, they can sustain a pretty big amount of weight. Um, it's more about the mileage because you're going to rebound on them. If you're really concerned about that, what a lot of runners do too is save, get two different pairs of shoes. Let me get back to my calendar. Get one shoe and like trade them out in between. Right there. Have one shoe for your long runs and the other shoe for your weekly runs and things like that, so you can give that EVA some time to rebound over time. So it doesn't really affect it too much.
Okay.
Are we raising our hands or let's see. You have a question? I have a question anyway. Well,
sure.
is there a question in the chat?
Not right now. You can.
Oh, okay.
It was a happy birthday, I think.
Oh, whose birthday is it?
It's actually my wife's birthday today too.
Oh, happy birthday.
Thank you.
My question is, so I just recently ran my first ultra. It was a 50K.
Nice.
And I have been running, gosh, for a long, long time, for like, I don't know, 30 years now. And I've been running longer distances. I mean, like marathon. I've been running like more than maybe 30 miles a week for a long time and did not have any issues with my toenails.
Yeah.
I'm putting myself out there here. And then I ran this 50K and I never had any issues. And now I'm having like bruising. Nothing terrible's happened, but what can I do to protect my toenails? So I've read about like toe caps and taping your toes. And what do you recommend?
It's a decent question. I mean, toenail health is super important because these toenails are the bane of our existence as runners. I think every single marathon I've ever seen or run in or been, party to, there's always a sign somebody holds up. Toenails are for sissies. Bruised toenails are, a badge of honor in our arena. But I mean, trimming your toenails really short is super duper valuable. Filing them down, any rough spots. I mean, I always said I pedicure the heck out of my toenails about a week or so before any type of race, and just trimmed them down and trimmed them really, really short, file them down, thinned them out, super duper valuable. If you're having a lot of toenail issues, sometimes it actually is a little bit of sliding in the shoe. And after that level of distance on like an ultra marathon, you're going to get a little bit sloppy towards the end, and your feet are going to, it's just going to happen, unfortunately. Along with blister prevention, because that was another question in the chat, those toe socks can be super duper valuable. If you have corns and calluses, superficial calluses are protective features for runners, but if they get a little bit thicker, that's when you can definitely file them down, take an emery board and file them down. They have over-the-counter like corn softeners. I would definitely 100% stay away from the acids like the salicylic acid, corn removers, and things like that too. But softening agents like Carousel or urea. Urea is a really good product to soften them. Vaseline is really good, and like a little small emery board to file them. Like little calluses down are super duper valuable to stop the blisters. But blisters are moisture wicking, sometimes changing your socks in a long run, and maybe even the toe socks can help that, and toenails as well.
That's a good point. I read that blisters are one of the top 2 reasons that ultra runners DNF. Blisters and GI issues. I was surprised that it was blisters, but
Yeah,
and I got this book. Do you recommend this book, Fix Your Feet? Have you ever seen this book?
I have not seen that book. No.
It's about it's just about taking care of things that happen on longer runs, and there's a whole bit about blisters and also taking care of calluses. That's where I first heard that you should actually like file down your calluses, which I
Yep.
always thought that calluses were protective.
I thought it
They,
was a good thing. Yeah.
yeah, some calluses are good. They are. There's a certain level of calluses that are good, but when they start getting real hard and you lose some pliability of the skin underneath, that's when you can get a blister underneath there. So you do want to file them down a little bit. Um, they can build up too much. So you do want to, there's a basic general maintenance that you need to do on some of the calluses. Um, here's the one thing when you do get a blister, okay, I think everybody knows now you want to keep the top on the blister because it serves as what we call a biologic dressing. But when you're draining this, if you could, sterilize it, betadine, alcohol, whatever you're not allergic to, sterilize the needle. You do want to do what we call pie crusting it. You want to make multiple small holes and not just one small hole to drain the blister. You can do multiple small little slits in the blister, especially if it's really big, because that'll allow it to continue draining over time and then change the dressing, change your bandage and things like that too. A little bit of warm compress is good. And then some type of antibiotic cream, Bactroban, Polysporin, Neosporin, something like that, or just general Aquaphor, CeraVe, even Vaseline on top with a non-stick bandage is super duper valuable in these things. But don't just make one little small hole. Make a whole bunch of little small holes so the area can drain. When my grandmother used to make pies, she pie crusted the crap out of the top of it. Super duper, super valuable on the blisters as well. Somebody had a question about heel pain. If you're starting to get a little bit of heel pain in the beginning, that's definitely a sign sometimes that either if you're just look at your shoes, number one. Every time I got a little bit of ache and pain, I went and just bought a new pair of shoes, and that usually helped a lot of it. But sometimes it could be a sign that you're getting a little bit of plantar fasciitis early on, and that's where stretching is really valuable. Working on your calf muscle, hamstring, anterior hip flexor, super valuable. Taking a golf ball and rolling your plantar fascia over time is super good too. And you may even try like a foam roller or like they have those massage sticks on your calf muscle. And a lot of people are really tender on the muscle part of the calf and just like halfway down the leg. Like the big muscle group just below that, before your Achilles. Don't get into your Achilles tendon, but like in that central third of your lower leg, massaging the soleus muscle and that soleus, what we call aponeurosis, that little thick area is super duper valuable. And you can look up exercises of how to do that, like foam roller or a massage stick to massage that to loosen up the calf muscle, stopping some of the heel pain, and doing a little bit of just gentle rolling of the plantar fascia. Certainly, ice is always, by the way, you have a foot injury, ice it. Period. End of story. There is no heat on anything in the foot. Nothing ever. Okay. Heat is really good for muscle aches and muscle soreness and muscle pain, which is usually like maybe your quadriceps, hamstring, but definitely like low back, shoulders, and things like that. But anything on the foot and ankle is always ice. And we always say ice for the first 72 hours, which is the first 3 days, because that's the acute inflammatory cascade response. Icing is really, really, really valuable. The bones and tendons and ligaments in the foot are so superficial. And if you put heat on bones or tendons, all you're going to do is inflame them more and irritate them a lot more. Yes, it does increase more blood flow, but that's a bad thing when you're having an injury. So ice is super duper valuable. And when you have acute heel pain, ice, 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 baby, right? Yeah. So ice is pretty much the whole thing. Is repeated toenail loss something?
I heard that you said that we should buy new shoes. That's the first thing I heard in your answer to that last question. So everyone, Dr. Beckman says buy new shoes.
Well, I think it's super valuable. We forget about, yes, running is expensive. Running is one of those big things. So right about like with the mid part of COVID, about November, December of like the COVID year, I got into rock climbing. And I used to go to the Momentum in Houston, and we did bouldering, so there was no ropes, no harness. Those shoes are way more expensive than running shoes, and they don't last very long, and you can't walk maybe 50 feet in them before they destroy. They're very painful. They're very bad for your feet, but shoes are so important, and it's like a couple $100 on a new pair of shoes to stop foot pain. It's so valuable. The technology they put into shoes today is pretty remarkable. The amount of money they spend is quite remarkable, but they just don't last that long. 400 to 500 miles is really not that long when you're running 30 to 40 miles a week, and just to change them, God, it's just so easy. So there was a question about, is repetitive toenail loss something to be concerned about? Like I said, the no, it's just, maybe sometimes your shoes might be too small or too big, and your foot sliding about too much. Maybe you're not giving yourself a pedicure or getting a pedicure as frequently enough, um, and maybe you're just running a lot. And it's just part of your foot anatomy, and it just happens. Um, so I think maybe just see how often you're cutting your toenails. Um, don't cut them super close to a race. Give yourself at least a week before you do it, um, to let the skin grow around. Certainly, if you get a little bit too close, file them down, file in between the toes, like really feel in there. Just work on that. But no, it's nothing to really be concerned about.
I
Usually,
I think
go ahead.
I heard you say that just earlier that you should thin out your toenail like when you're filing it. Is that what you said?
I did, yeah. If I always did that too, like on the ends. After I cut them, I took a little file and filed them just the tip, not the top, not the thickness part, because that can be a little bit sensitive. But I always filed the end of them where I cut them, and especially in between the toes, like that corner, especially on the big toe. I filed that down a little bit because I didn't want the rubbing. Um,
Yeah, that's some good advice. Because I think that, rubbing against the sock, it's like pulling your nail up, isn't it?
Absolutely, yeah. Other questions here. Yeah, Ufer's, yes. Different. There's a comment about Ufer's recovery slippers. There's some other slippers too. Spenco has a recovery slipper, super duper valuable. When my wife, here's a little side note too. Um, Certainly, and Melissa was talking about some of the volunteers that don't run and stuff. Other things that are valuable around the house and things like that. Danskos. Dansko clogs are magical. When my wife had plantar fasciitis and was running, she had Danskos by her bedside, because of the arch support and because of the rigidity. Like it totally helped her plantar fasciitis a lot, and they're super easy to put on. But the UFAs are a really good thing too. I tried some UFAs on myself personally. I didn't like the way that the heel dropped in the back of it a little bit. They weren't very comfortable for me, but there are other options like Spenco makes a recovery sandal that has a decent arch support in it. But Danskos are like I think my favorite shoe, especially for prolonged standing. Um, Real quick note before I answer the next question. There are questions, and Melissa talked a little bit about this about zero drop shoes. So zero drop shoes are essentially where the back of the shoe and the front of the shoe, that foam is the same and equal all the way across. So they have 10 millimeters in the back and 10 millimeters in the front, or whatever the number is, and there's no drop. Typical traditional running shoes have about an 8 to 10 millimeter drop, and some of them have a 5 or 6. The traditional running shoe is about 8 to 10 millimeter. And the reason for that is because people don't stretch their Achilles,
Mhm.
hamstring, and anterior hip flexor as much. If you're flexible and you're comfortable enough in a zero drop shoe and you're stretching regularly, zero drop shoes are fine. If you're having any bit of Achilles tendonitis, plantar fasciitis, heel pain, zero drop shoes are the very first thing that you need to change and go back to that 8 to 10 millimeter drop. That one thing alone can fix your heel pain instantaneously. Okay. So zero drop shoes are not good unless you're stretching and flexible. Okay. That's my opinion. As far as breaking in your shoes, is it really a thing you need to do? The answer is no. Okay. Um, Breaking in your shoes is really about getting used to the new shoe type. If you're going from a Neutral cushion or standard cushion to a motion control? Absolutely, because you're not really breaking in the shoe, you're breaking in you. And the way that your foot rotates in that frontal plane is going to affect your knees and different muscle groups, and your stabilizers are going to affect that quite a bit. But and certainly like you could have a bad batch of shoes, so you want to give yourself a little bit of time on getting in. Like if you're getting a new shoe and going to run a race on a brand new pair of shoes, I think it's a bad idea. I would run a couple of times on those. Um, it's funny, like as you run, like you get these little anecdotes and you remember certain things. My wife was running in these shoes for a long time. She bought a brand new pair, ran them for a week, and she started complaining to me. She goes, "I just got a new pair of shoes and my feet are starting to hurt." I'm like, I don't know how that is. She didn't change the shoe. They're the exact same color, exact same year model, the whole thing. And I looked at the shoe and I pressed on it, and the foam was like faulty, and
Oh,
it was like a bad batch, and it didn't have any cushion, so the shoe like collapsed down, and it was bad, right? So we took it back to Fleet Feet. They were like, "Oh my God, this is right. Here's a new pair of shoes." And she's like, "My foot pain's gone." So just because they're new, like these things are not made, not made in America anymore. Um, Sometimes you can get that. It does happen, and it happened to my wife. And it's kind of funny that you talk about that, but if you're changing the brands, if you're changing the style, yeah, you want to break yourself in, but you really don't have to break the shoes in too much, right? But you do want to give yourself a little bit of time to get used to that shoe, just to make sure it's not a bad batch, because it definitely can happen from time to time. Funny how these things happen over life, isn't it?
yeah.
By the way, I can y'all see this if I have the shoe up here?
It's a little blurry, but if you move it
Okay,
closer, maybe to your face or to.
how's that? So I always ran on these laces. They call them Yanks, or these bungee cord laces in my shoe. Um, and I changed all my shoes to do that. It was typically a triathlon trick, because as you're getting off your bike, you throw your bike down, you take your bike shoes off, and you have to put your running shoes on and put those on, and you got to have a very quick transition. I converted to that. I'm also lazy tying my shoes. Um, I'm just honest. Yes, I'm a foot doctor. I'm lazy tying my shoes. So I always got these like bungee cord laces to do. I love them for me. They do take a long time to get used to, and they're definitely there's a big fiddle factor on the tightness of those. But it's another thing that you can splurge on different shoes as well.
I'm going to jump in on that. Uh, do you have any tips on elasticated laces? I find that when I'm using them, and I'm incredibly lazy, they'll be tight
Love it.
At
Yeah.
the toe and at the ankle, and then loose in the middle, or vice versa. Are there any lacing methods that you find are better or worse?
Yeah, so that's a great question. And there's a question about what's the name of them. I use the one called Yanks, Yankz. That's the brand I use. Um, so when it's funny when you start lacing them, you start all the way down at the end and you work your way back towards the ankle. When you're doing them, you just got to make them really loose in the beginning when you're lacing them. When I change shoes, and sometimes you can reuse the ones that you have before, when you're using the bungee laces, it takes me, and I'm used to doing this, about 10 minutes per foot almost to get the lacing properly. I always start a lot looser and then tighten it up slowly over time. If you have a high arch, sometimes you can skip a lace, especially with bungee laces, and you can skip a lace if you're having it in the exact same spot. Find out where it is in the shoe, find out which lace it is, and you can skip a lace on that. If you look on Google, like you can look up lacing techniques if you have a super high arch. They have a way of like skipping a spot on there. Um, by the way, it brings me another note of lacing. If you look at your running shoes on the topmost part by where the tongue is, there's always that extra little hole behind that. Does anybody know what that's for? Do y'all know what that is for? You know what I'm
Heel
talking about?
lock.
What's that?
heel lock. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a heel
Heel
lock.
locks.
Exactly. Yeah, it's not ankle stability. It's a heel lock. So by adding that extra lace, you can pull your foot backwards and it stops that heel slippage.
Mhm.
It's a super good thing to do. And there's a way to do it where you don't have to even skip. You can just go from the top one on the same side, loop around, and then crisscross through that loop on either side. And you can look on Google and stuff, but it pulls the foot back just slightly to stop that heel slippage and stuff. Um, it doesn't give ankle stability. Ankle is higher than where the shoe is, by the way, and that's only you can only get ankle stability from a high top, like a hiking boot. Somebody commented about that. So
Carrie, looks like had a question.
Do my favorite running shoe that I had for decades went to a super foamy, mushy
hate
sole.
that. I hate that.
And, should I have just gone with it? I mean, how do you feel about the mushiness of soles, and how do you know what's good for you? I just went to a different shoe brand.
Yeah, that's like the $1 million question. It's funny when my wife and I are traveling around right now, we're traveling around the world. I always call myself, I am the princess. Okay. And like, this is that classic princess and the pea problem. I hated, I actually convinced Hoka to give me a pair of their shoes to run in one time because it was like all the rage, that thick maximal cushioning, 24 millimeters of cushioning. I can't run in them. They were horrible. It's like do you want to drive a BMW that's super duper tight on the road, or do you want that Cadillac mushy ride?
Mhm.
Um, I'm not a big fan of them. I don't like them. I think you lose a little bit of stability, especially if you're going up and down curbs. If you're on different sides of the road, you can lose a little bit of stability. I don't like that road feel. I'm not a big fan of them, to be perfectly honest. I hate them for me, and I think they're being overutilized in a lot of runners because they feel so good in the store, but people forget that they're just walking around on them, and that's like just your body weight. When we're running, it is technically 1.5 times your body weight that's compressing that whole thing down, and all that compression doesn't rebound quite as fast. So yeah, I've had to switch shoes around all the time. I don't know why all these manufacturers, Asics, Saucony,
Basics.
New Balance, like a Mizuno. I was on Asics for years, and then like they changed the shoe brand, just like you said, and I switched over to Mizuno. I'm like, I would have never run a Mizuno, and I put the shoes on. It was like, oh my god. Here's my advice. That's really honestly is like, be the princess and the pea, or a princess. Okay, and find the shoe that feels home to your foot. I don't know how to say it other than that. There's no medical way to say that. Like it's just like,
Mhm.
oh, this is it. This like it's green, it's blue, it's whatever. I don't care. This is what feels perfect, and I don't like that cushion or things like that too. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
That kind of goes along with something that I've been wondering because nowadays they have all different kinds of running shoes. Like they have the super trainers, they have like super shoes for racing, they have
Yep.
like recovery shoes. And so it sounds like you probably not think that there was any real benefit to having a shoe for recovery or, all those different kinds of shoes. Like what in your, in your stable of shoes, what are the kind of essentials, or is there just one? You just have one jack of all trades shoe?
No, it's a good question. No, I have a lot of friends who do ultras and run quite a bit, and they have their race day shoes. They get the expensive, the Nike Vaporfly 4% or whatever, and they race in those only. And the reason that they do that is because they're trying to PR, they're trying to race, and they're saving them for that race day. Typically, those race shoes like the 4%, those brand new Adidas that are, I think they're $300 or $400. I mean, they're pretty expensive. They only last about 200 miles. Okay, they don't last that long. But the benefit is in that carbon fiber plate because where the shoe flexes and releases, there's actually a 4% increase in propulsion. So you're working 4% less. And after 26.2 miles, it may be 10 seconds or 5 seconds. Well, I mean, for me, my fastest marathon was a 3:58. I was not fast. So 10, 15 seconds, I didn't care that much. But other people where you're trying to PR, you're trying to get into Boston, you're trying to do that little thing, that may be very valuable to you. And you can have those race day shoes that are super valuable, and then your junk mile shoes, and then your medium level shoes. So some runners do have like three shoes that they'll run in. If you're doing a high mileage, they're having like their speed day, and their day what they're doing like you don't want like a maximal cushioning shoe or a good shoe to where you're doing like hill repeats or stair climbing. You want a tighter, like a lower to ground shoe. And I think that's perfectly acceptable to do it that way if your budget can allow that. I think it's a safe way to do that. So it depends upon what your goals are. If you're just like, you know, just trying to get through, I think typically a one pair of shoe can do it. But if you're trying to like race and you're trying to do Boston and you're trying to really go for it, I think there's definitely some good medical benefit to multiple shoes.
So when you say medical benefit, does that mean that it's ultimately healthier for your feet in the long term to have multiple shoes?
It depends upon what, like I said, it depends upon what your goals are. And I think, yeah, you could be safer doing that. If you're running 50, 60 miles a week, I got to that level when I ran Goofy. It's kind of funny because right about 45 to 50 miles, like things get a lot easier. It's harder to manage your time, but things get a lot easier with your body at that level. But I had to have two shoes because like you're running on those shoes, and sometimes the foam doesn't have time to rebound, right? If you're especially in like hot, like Houston hot days, and you're sweating and they get real wet, like it takes time for that shoe to rebound. So if you're running like we used to do, I think it was called the Hansen method of running, and the Hansons had this whole thing where you didn't put a lot of long days in, but you did like a 10 on Tuesday and then a 10 on Wednesday, right? And then like a 16 on Saturday. Well, 10 on Wednesday, 10 on Thursday or whatever, Tuesday, Wednesday, back to back. Maybe you want to change that shoe because that foam, especially if you were sweating a lot and the shoe got wet, didn't have time to rebound. It didn't have time to release it all the way out. And you're collapsing it down and you're wearing it out a little bit further. So once again, everybody's different. It depends upon the goals. Does that make sense?
What do you think about Hanson's? They had the long run for marathon training was like 16 miles.
Yep. I honestly, for me, it was amazing. I loved it because you do put more weekly mileage in. I think medically it's a little medically once again. I think it's a little bit safer. It's a safer way to do it because you're training your body to have that recovery. If you're doing it properly, you have that stress and recovery. You go to the strength day, and you can still get a lot of miles in doing 4, maybe maximum 5 days a week of running. If you're running 7 days a week, you don't have time to recover and heal. But back to back, like that 8 and 8 or 8 and 10 and 10 and 10 and 10 and 12 and then like a couple days off and then that big 14 or 16 on the weekend. Those are big weeks, but you have enough time to not beat yourself up doing the 20, 22 miles. I mean, that slogging is really painful, but I love the Hanson's method. It's not for everybody, right? Because you do have to have timing. You got to have your nutrition sound. You got to plan your water stops. You got to plan, especially in Houston, you got to plan things a little bit more readily. But I love that method. I think it's honestly a little bit safer.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So, Melissa, I think we have 5 minutes left. Just wanted to alert you. And there are three questions in the chat that are leftovers that we might be able to cover.
Okay.
Yeah.
Ultra emergency kit. What items do you recommend? Oh, wow. I've never done an ultra. I only did Ironman, and we had people. So I think in an ultra emergency kit, I would do something with like a little tiny emery board, maybe some moleskin, absolutely Vaseline, an extra pair of socks, a Band-Aid or two, and then more salt tablets and more for the nutrition. Toenail fungus. Okay. We'll do the little bare feet, wide and flat. Some of the shoes, like some of the zero drop shoes, if you're flexible, have a little bit wider toe box on them on the short, wide feet. You just got to look for different brands. I mean, Nikes are predominantly more narrow. Pumas are a little bit more narrow. You just got to see what brands are a little bit wider on there. As far as toenail fungus treatment and prevention, honestly, that's something that if you're trying all the filing them down and doing the over-the-counter Vicks Vapor Rub overnight, it is a medical thing where you really need to see a doctor, get your liver function tested, and there's an oral medication that's extremely safe. It's called Lamisil. It's been on the market forever. It's super duper safe. And there are some medical reasons of why not to take it and some contraindications. So see a doctor. But honestly, the oral medications the best treatment out there. Over-the-counter topical treatments do not work, period. They're no better than Vicks Vapor Rub, which is super duper cheap. But a concomitant, the oral Lamisil along with some topical can be pretty valuable for toenail fungus, but you got to see a doctor for that, unfortunately, because you do need to check your liver functions. Just a month. Any final questions?
I think we crammed a lot into this hour. This was so very helpful.
Awesome. I can talk fast too. By the way, final note. Yeah. I didn't run as fast. I think my fastest thing was honestly my transitions, not the swimming, not the biking, not the running. Final note. Once again, if y'all have questions, please reach out to Melissa's got my contact info. I'm happy to answer any questions off the bat and whatnot, and behind the scenes also.
Yes, thank you so much. Thank you so much, Dr. Beckman. I really appreciate all of us, really appreciate the time that you
Absolutely.
donated. And I think this hour was chock full of information. And I'm sure we'll get a lot of questions for you that I'll just forward on to you.
Yeah.
And we would love to send you some swag. So hopefully I can get your information that we can send you something.
You're super sweet. The only thing I want is love and best wishes, because we're traveling. My wife and I are traveling the world, and we have one backpack.
Oh, wow.
I have like one backpack each. I have no space.
Wow. So that kitten's not gonna make it there, huh?
Yeah.
Well, I was going to suggest, guys, how about we name an animal at the shelter after him? The next one that comes in that doesn't have a name.
Yeah.
That would be great. That would warm my heart quite a bit. I mean, honestly, like his dog. By the way, some of the things that we're doing trusted house sitters over here, where we're watching people's dogs and pets while they're on they call them holiday. They don't call it vacation. So while they go on holiday, we watch their pets for them and stuff too. So
really, that's
really
so cool.
it's amazing. Yeah.
That's awesome. Well, I'm glad that I didn't realize that you were also animal lovers over there.
Oh my
That's
God.
awesome.
Well, the only reason we did this was because my dog of 17 years passed away about 2 years ago. We're like, okay, let's go. Yeah, let's go. So yeah, if there's a dog, if it's a female dog, if you name one of the dogs Lucy, that's my last dog, that would be a very big honor for me.
Okay, well, we got it. We'll
Awesome.
do that for you.
All right. Thanks, Melissa.
All right, thanks. And thank you everybody for coming. And I hope to see you guys soon. Don't forget, June 3rd, that's the day to ask your donors to make a donation to your fundraiser.
All right. Bye,
Bye, you guys.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Bye-bye.